I was growing up, I'm very fortunate that I had parents who had an interesting apartment, and in that apartment they had chairs by Joe Colombo and a sofa set by Vladimir Kagan called the Omnibus. And at a very young age, these pieces sort of had a life of their own. With the Omnibus sofa, you could climb onto the different levels, or you could sit on this sort of single mattress size rolling sofa piece that slid underneath the base of the omnibus. And we had this amazing, playroom of a living room. We probably weren't supposed to be playing there, but it was from a young age that I had exposure to this material, and I didn't really understand what it was until much later, that there was even a market for this, or that there was a whole industry based around this material. But it implanted in my imagination from a young age, and made me understand how your environment could have such an impact on you. So a funny story about the Joe Colombo chairs is that neither of my parents really knew or understood what they had. I don't think they really cared so much about the furnishings of their home. But with the Joe Colombo chairs, of course, as a child, I loved them. They spin, they're high back. In fact, there's one behind me right now. But at the time, I begged my mother to allow me to have these chairs one day because I thought they were so comfortable. My mother for years said, these things are ragged, the leather's worn, you don't want them, you'll never want them. And I was insistent for years, not knowing who made them or anything about them. And finally, I went on to a postgraduate program in London where I happened to find these chairs at auction long after my mother had thrown them in the town dump of Salisbury, Connecticut. And I found them in an auction catalog, and they were worth, several $1,000s at the time. And I remember I circled it and I faxed the page back to my mother and said, see, but I finally found out that they were actually there was a name to the designer, and that I was right all along. They were interesting chairs. And my mother still wrote me back and said, well, they were ruined, so you wouldn't have wanted them anyway. But many years later, when I moved to Miami, I decided it was time to go find another Joe Colombo chair.